I put together a recommendation to Superintendent Willis to ask for your approval to take the 8th grade class in June once again to Washington, D.C. The dates of the trip are June 11th to June 15th. The cost of the trip is $739 per student. We would like to ask parents to pay $760 to build in a bit of a scholarship for those students in need who may not be able to pay the full $760 to attend. I have attached a itemized itinerary from Capital Tours for the trip, and also for those students who choose not to attend, I have attached a draft of, it's actually what the children did last year who stayed home, the 8th grade students, with a few minor changes only to improve their experience. I've marked it as a sample, but it's pretty close to what we would be offering the students who stay and choose to do local trips. So they may go to Newburyport to do a tour with the Coast Guard and take a harbor tour, and then the Bunker Hill Pavilion in Charlestown and do the Constitution and Bunker Hill Monument, the duck tours, Franklin Zoo Park, and Canobie Lake. The trip for the local students, we want to make sure that it is comparable as much as possible to the trip in Washington, D.C. So we want to have some local history that we can offer them with the museums, but also some comparable sort of social engagement activities that those children attending the DC trip will have. But my hope is that as many students who want to go are able to go.
Kathy, obviously it overlaps. I mean, the students that are going to Washington come back on the 15th, and the students that are staying home have a itinerary right through the 17th.
This was last year's.
Okay.
So the dates would be the same.
All right, so the days should be the same then, so that they're not going to miss. Okay.
No,
all
the
right.
dates would be the same. I just used this last year's itinerary.
The only thing I would say in the alternate itinerary for the kids that are staying home, and again, I'm just throwing, this is good. I think the Bunker Hill Pavilion, I think the duck tour and all that is good. I'm just wondering if maybe you couldn't give them some kind of a more civic government type presentation, something at the State House maybe with Senator Tarr and Representative Jones.
That's a great idea.
And just to mirror kind of what they're doing down in Washington. You know, maybe a day on the Hill or something like that with state rep. And
I think that's an excellent suggestion.
yeah, particularly if they're in session or something like that.
Representative Jones to see what.
Yeah, I'm sure he'd be delighted to bring them in.
That's an excellent suggestion.
I think it's an election year too next year. But no, I think that would be a good experience for them. Any other questions regarding the Washington, D.C. trip? This is a trip that's been going on now for how long, Kyle?
10 plus years.
I would say so. And it's a great itinerary. I mean, going to Washington, D.C. is something that kids remember for the rest of their life.
I've been fortunate enough to take 8th grade kids to Costa Rica and 8th grade kids to Quebec and 8th grade kids to Washington, D.C. And Washington, D.C. by far is the most educational.
It absolutely is. I don't think you can
it's a fantastic
compare it to
experience.
anything else, really. So you can get so much in those 4 or 5 days.
Michael was reminding me that we do have a few children, for a variety of reasons, who will likely not choose either DC or the local trips.
That was on my mind.
Stay on campus, and we will put together a schedule for them that involves as much enrichment as we are able to.
My recollection in the past, from talking to Mr. Fauché and prior principal, was that there weren't a lot of kids that didn't go because of the cost. They went because they chose not to go for whatever reason. So I know that's always been an issue with this committee. I do think that there's a suggestion in your presentation that they may do some fundraisers. I think it's a good idea to do some fundraisers and see if you can come up with some money, if not necessarily to reduce the cost of the kids that are going, maybe to pay for some kids that might not be able to afford to go. I'm not sure if that group's going to be identified or not. But
Parents Association is already, and in fact, some of them were going to come here tonight, but I said it was unnecessary. I've already offered a generous amount of money to offset.
That's great.
I know you mentioned that having all of the parents pay, those that are pay additional to perhaps fund scholarships. I don't know if I like that being mandatory.
No,
Oh, it's not
I was
mandatory.
gonna make it
Oh,
optional.
it'd be
Yeah.
an- okay.
Yeah.
I think,
thought you were gonna make it
I think you
mandatory.
indicated that would
Yeah.
be
Okay.
kind of an optional thing.
And
And the
I'm, and I'm hoping parents who are able to would be willing
Right.
to.
The other question I have is, do you have a number of, as how many, full scholarships I know we sometimes give like half scholarships to families. You know how many scholarships we gave out last year?
I don't, I'm sure I could find out.
I'd just like to know that number.
It is my policy to give out full scholarships only when absolutely necessary. I'm more in favor of giving partial scholarships to more children.
Yes.
I think that makes
And
sense.
would work with families to work out some sort of payment plan or
And
something
you know,
that better fits there.
these families are on notice. This trip's in June. I mean, I know a lot of people struggling right now, but it does give them time to try to raise the money through, you know, even for the kids' Christmas gifts or birthday gifts from relatives and things like that to go on this trip. So I think there's a lot of time for them to prepare for it. It's not being sprung on them at the last minute, that's for sure.
Many of the families are already anticipating, I've already received a few emails anticipating the trip happening. I've been waiting to get approval before holding a parent meeting, but
Okay.
the teacher leader who heads this up, Nick Damiano, is already set to go as a social studies teacher in grade 8 to have a parent meeting
Good.
probably right after Thanksgiving.
I noticed this on the itinerary, White House for picture taking. Is that new?
No, I don't think so.
Did they do that last year?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's a very large picture.
Is that the White House or the Capitol, the large
Because
picture?
they're splitting it up into
Yeah.
two groups, though.
I think it's Capitol.
We
This is
take
split
it-
up into two groups.
I see that, A and B.
Picture in front of the Capitol.
Capitol, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
But I'm sure there are White House, you know, I went with a different school last year, but we did take pictures in front of the
Mhm.
White House.
Okay.
And I intend to go on the trip this year, and Mr. Maloney will go next year.
Okay, any further questions? Cliff?
My concern has always been for the situation where neither the parent nor the child will admit that they can't afford to go and would really like to go. And I know that I've been assured in the past that there'll be a sensitivity to that and that we'll be energetic in making sure that it isn't a back out because of a financial problem where they just won't ask. They're too proud to ask.
I'm sure you're aware of our skilled guidance counselors, Sylvia Weiss and Kathy Carmody, and they are just super great at sensitive conversations and working with families when difficult conversations need to take place. And, you know, I think we'll wait until the initial sign-ups and then start kind of investigating as delicately as we can as to why children are choosing not to sign up, and work with the guidance counselors to make every attempt to make the trip available to all children who want to go.
The amount of this, the cost of this trip, in putting it into perspective a little, is about the same amount of money as the anticipated cost of the new school per family. Now, this is a one year thing, and obviously the school will be for a longer period of time than that. But that just puts it into a little bit of a perspective. It's not an inconsequential amount.
Absolutely is not inconsequential.
There's another. Most of the itinerary is pretty straightforward. I don't have any real problem with it, but I do have a little bit of concern here for the Moonlight Dance Cruise. That sounds like, depending on the configuration of that can turn into a very pedestrian kind of a thing, or it can turn into somewhat more rowdy than that. And I just hope that that's kept to a dull roar, so to speak.
I can assure you that the trip will be very well chaperoned by teachers and parents. Mr. Damiano, I'm sure you're familiar with, has chaperoned the trip for years and years.
He does a great job, too.
He
He's
does a
very
great
good.
job, and I know from my son attending last year that the cruise is spectacular at sunset, and there's a picture on the backdrop of my computer of the skyline. It's absolutely beautiful. So.
Washington's a pretty place. Yeah. It's a pretty
I think
place.
they've done the cruise every year, or at least the last several years. I think they even did it. My daughter went like 7 years ago, and my son went 4 years ago, and I know they did it those years.
No, it's a lot of responsibility for the staff and for the chaperones when they go on these trips. There's always a risk involved, and I admire the people that take the responsibility, so I'm sure it'll work out well. Anything else before we vote? Okay, we need a motion to approve the 8th grade trip to Washington, D.C.
I'll make a motion to approve the 8th grade annual trip to Washington DC.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Mel and a second by Mike. Any further discussion? Anything further? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries by a vote of 4-0. Thank you very much. And I think that's all we have
Say
for
anything
Ms.
else?
O'Connell.
Anything else we can do for you?
Well, you here?
Yeah.
So you don't have to come back?
We'll be back on
Christmas for the
December
middle
5th.
school.
Yeah.
All right.
That's right.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
All right, let's go back to the MSBA secondary school building update. I know the superintendent has some information to update us on. We did have a meeting back last Tuesday, November 1st, actually.
That's
So I'll
correct.
turn it over to the superintendent.
During that meeting, there were lots of discussions that took place. One in particular was the location of the central office in relation to the building project. The committee did vote to use the large group room area with an addition as the location for central office. So I know that Doran Whittier will be bringing design specifications soon to the SSBC for review. Representatives from Doran Whittier conducted follow-up meetings with specific departments at both the middle school and the high school, and that took place on November 1st and 2nd. These were follow-ups to original conversations held with the teachers regarding their hopes and dreams for the educational spaces in the new project. The SSBC also discussed the need for clear and concise information for the community that takes a look at the project costs as compared to no build options, as well as comparing to gut renovation costs. And so a subcommittee was identified to work on this information. We actually met this morning. The subcommittee includes Chris Simler, our OPM, Don Kelleher from the Finance Committee, Sean Delaney, Board of Selectmen, Janine Imbriano, who sits on the School Building Committee, and Steve Nathan. So we will be reporting back to the SSBC at the next meeting. We also discussed the need for bathroom, team rooms, and storage areas near the turf field. And Doran Whittier will create a schematic design as an alternate cost to the project and bring that to a future meeting as well. And once these schematics are developed, Doran Whittier will schedule a meeting with municipal departments to discuss traffic flow patterns and access. And I believe that will take place this week. At the meeting, the OPM talked about an estimated reimbursement rate that now falls in the vicinity of 51.54% of eligible costs. But once the schematics are completed this week, they will be sent to the cost estimator so that we are going to have actual costs of the project in the very near future. So we won't be talking in generalities, we'll be talking with more level of specificity. Representatives of the various youth groups in town were invited to the last SSBC meeting and gave their input on the project. During the conversations at the last SSBC, we talked about the timeline for the project, and it was noted that the high school would be open by September of 2014, and the middle school would be open by September of 2015. So that, again, is bringing some parameters around the project, bringing it to life, and generating a great deal of enthusiasm. The next meeting of the SSBC is scheduled for Tuesday, November 15th at 6:30. All of these meetings are open to the public, and they take place at the high school in the modular cafeteria.
Thank you, Kathy. Any comments or questions?
I'm just, I've been attending, and I know Michael's been there also,
Yes.
the last few SSBC meetings, and I'm really happy that they're folding in as options the some sort of building down near the turf field and also the central administration space in the school. I mean, in the end, we may decide not to do those, but I think it makes sense to have those as optional add-ons to the project.
Realistically, that has to be addressed. I mean,
Right.
obviously, the administrative space is a necessity. It has to, and I think it belongs in the in the campus, in the,
Right.
I agree.
in the two buildings.